To me, pride is acceptance.
It had been for many years illegal to be gay in the army.
At the time, if I'd identified as a gay man, I would have lost everything.
That's a horrible realisation that I was working for an organisation that would have dismissed me if they found out that I was gay.
I was fortunate. When I joined the Air Force, we were already in a fairly good place. But in the past 9 years, I have seen a lot of positive change in the right direction. I can't really fault the Air Force for what they've done. I think they've been as loud and proud as they could possibly be, and we're continuing in that direction.
It had been for many years illegal to be gay in the army, with an incredible number of people having suffered significant humiliation, poor treatment, leading to discharge from the army, and of course our sister services in the RAF and the Navy because of their homosexuality. At the point at which I joined in 1995, and I suspect for a number of years before that, much of the way in which the army operated in regard to someone being gay in the army, I think had many parallels to how civilian society operated. So I think about how I conducted myself in the army, and I was incredibly private about who I went home to, where I was at the weekend, the people I played sport with and went, socialised with. But equally, I would be incredibly private about who those people were with any of my civilian friends as well, because it just wasn't a time when you could be open about such things without being really, really careful. So I think it's important to recognise the process of the travel through time and how everything from a civilian perspective and a military perspective has changed. But when I think back to 1995, I remember being very, very conscious of all of the language that I might use, any conversation I might have about who I was and where I was and who I was with outside of my immediate army circles, and feeling that I had to pretend to be somebody that I wasn't. And I recall having a photograph of a bloke that I knew, who was a smashing bloke, but I used that picture as to avoid the conversation about who I might be going out with. So I had a picture of this chap pinned to my notice board in my room at Sandhurst while I was going through my officer training, because it felt like a helpful distraction, and it was something that would say, look, don't look here, look over there. It's okay. That's the relationship that she's in. I remember there being almost a tribe within a tribe. Those gay women who knew of each other, and a safety in that space. And actually, in hindsight, quite a lot of comradeship in that safe shared space.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky. I think I've had a very positive experience when it comes to gender and sexuality and stuff in the Navy. I've never ever had an issue where I felt that I've not been welcome or that I have, unequal to someone else. I'm
incredibly fortunate that I work in an environment where parts of who I am are represented around me. So, for example, I have people above me, higher ranks, who identify as gay or who identify as transgender, and they're highly visible. We've got allies at work, ranks below me, ranks above me, who are perfectly comfortable with being allies to the LGBT community.
I didn't come out until 2005, so 5 years after the ban. But to me, it became a leadership issue for me at work, because I was running a team of sort of 40 people. We were just about to embark on a deployment in Afghanistan at the time. And I sensed that there were rumours swirling around me, and that people were talking about me behind my back. And I remember my boss saying to me at the time, well, I think you're going to have to come out, because I'd already sort of spoken to him about it, to pre-warn him, if you like, to say, I think at some stage I'm going to have to do this. But I don't want to feel like I'm being forced to come out. But to me, it became a leadership issue, because I wanted to set an honest, transparent, sort of working environment, because we were about to go on operations in Afghanistan.
If I rewind again to pre 2000, I was consuming effort and person bandwidth trying to pretend to be somebody that I wasn't, trying to remember who I had told what and when, about who, and which version of the truth I'd given to that person and which version of the truth I'd given to the other person, and trying to knit all those stories together to remember the person that I was meant to pretend to be.
Initially, it was fine because I didn't realise I was gay. And then that horrible realisation that I was working for an organisation that would have dismissed me if they found out that I was gay. And so you were very aware that you couldn't speak to people about it. You got very good at talking in the third person, and you were just very guarded. And looking back now, I think I probably didn't invest my time into my career as much as I should have done, because I was always being guarded and worrying about what people were saying, worrying about what they were thinking. So I probably was a lot more reserved, but that's what happens when you have to sort of think about your career, and the fact that I didn't want to lose my career because I loved it.
But because I wanted to join the Air Force, and it was illegal, and pursue a career in the Air Force, I had to bury any sort of identification like that, and did effectively for 10 years. So, and when I joined the Air Force, it was something that I'd wanted to do, something that I was incredibly fond of. And once I joined the Air Force and I got established professionally, it actually materialised it was something that I was actually quite good at. So, I was in a successful career. I was in a job that I loved. I was being paid to travel around the world and see great things. And in a job that I was really, really enjoying. And therefore, clearly, that it sort of applied some pressure in terms of me not being my true self, if you like, and hiding who I really was. Because at the time, if I'd identified as a gay man, I would have lost everything.
It was quite a shock when I kind of got the email to say that we've chosen you as one of the co-chairs, because I think a lot of my part was like, I've had experience with other organisations, obviously on Civvy Street and stuff, so I had a lot of experience to give, but I thought, I'm an AB, they're not really going to look at this, they're going to want the higher up ranks to talk to all the commanders and the captains and the admirals and stuff, because that's a lot of the people that you have to email all the time. So it was quite a shock, but I think that's part of the wanting to change Compass and make it more welcoming. It's a lot more welcoming if you can go, well, we've got ABs that are in high up positions in our organisation. It makes other ABs less afraid to come up and talk to us.
I think every service person at some point in their career will need support, be that for relationships or family planning. And when I have needed some questions answered, usually around fertility and IVF, those sorts of things, my medical centre have been fantastic at providing the information. So I have needed it to an extent, and when I've gone looking for it, it's been widely available for me.
We knew we had to start trying to communicate with the other LGBTQ plus people that we didn't know. And so it was then trying to advertise in any way. So originally we set it up on Facebook, set it up on a so those people that we did know of, we would say, right, okay, let's all give our email addresses in, but that would be a secret email list, never shared with anybody else but the people on the network, because there were still some people that were not comfortable with coming out. And then it was slowly liaising with the equality and diversity areas about what changes we need to put in place. And then we started to have conferences, and they would be single service conferences, but then actually we needed the strength of the other services to come together. And so it would be a tri-service conference, and then the MOD as well. I think it was seeing the network grow from 4 people sat round a table looking at each other thinking, what do we do now, to then seeing it grow, seeing all three services and the MOD all joining Stonewall and working together. But I think for me personally is when all 3 uniform organisations marched at Pride in 2008, and I led the Navy, but it was still is probably one of the proudest moments.
I was based in Bristol at the time, and whilst the people that were pulling those policies together were well-meaning, they were doing it from an uninformed position, because they weren't necessarily, well, effectively they were probably male, they were heterosexual, and they'd been in the service a long time. So they were doing it from an uninformed position. So my view was that actually we needed to engage in that process as a community and try and assist ourselves in making the policies more appropriate and more applicable to the people that they were going to affect.
It does make you smile to see the rest of the British public celebrating something that for so long was so subdued and, you know, kept under wraps. So it's a real kind of happy relief, I suppose. And, you know, in true British style, there's always far too much bunting than is necessary, and it's just a lovely show of, you know, respect and acceptance, which I actually think the British public are very good at.
I think it was just incredible proudness that we'd got to where we were, but we were also aware that we couldn't have done that without all of those that had gone before us, all of those that had fought for the changes that we were now benefiting from. So it was pride, absolute pride, but sadness. Everybody wanted to take photographs. The media wanted to have interviews with people. There was a slight sadness on my part because the inside the military were not particularly interested, but I think there was a moment that the penny dropped. You know, nobody could have paid for that much media interest and that much press coverage on how the military looked very inclusive at that point. That was a really big turning point. And from there, we went on to have LGBT champions or advocates. And so it was getting somebody at the board level to say, right, I will sit with the LGBT network, and this happens now across all the networks. And in 2009, the second Sea Lord, so the head of HR as such, spoke at the Stonewall conference.
To me, pride is acceptance. Acceptance for every person to be themselves and to not be judged for being themselves.
I think pride means to me confidence, happiness, and a sense of self that means that I know that for whatever I bring, for good or for bad, I'm welcomed for the whole of me.
Pride is like about finding those communities, and obviously because it's such a big month and a big event, they all kind of come out together. So it's like, if you didn't think you could find your group, now's the time to find it, because they'll be out promoting themselves.
For me, it's still a joyous occasion. And, you know, I've been to London Pride as a spectator with my wife and our little boy, and he was absolutely tiny then. But it was being able to want to do that and feel comfortable doing that.
It is a celebration. And you know, we are lucky in many respects in the UK that we enjoy as a community the position that we do, because society has changed, and it is much more acceptable now, clearly, than it was, you know, when Pride first started in the 1970s, when it was still illegal and all those sorts of things. But it is a fantastic celebration of who we are and what we are, and we should be proud of that, because it has been a tumultuous journey for the community to get to where we are. There is a lot to be thankful for. There's a lot of hard work that's been done in that time, and there's a lot to celebrate as a result of that, and we should be proud of that fact.